Today I want to talk to you about capitalism and Adam Smith, the English gentleman who invented the economic idea. Capitalism is a revolution in how people are allowed to make money. Up until the early 1770s, the mid 1770s, quite frankly, most of the wealth in the entire world was held by just a very few select individuals. There were kings and queens, pharaohs, Caesars, emperors, and dictators. They all claimed a divine right, something from heaven had given them the right to regulate all the wealth on the earth. In fact, we were their property, whether you want to use the most negative term, slaves, or in Europe they called us serfs, dressed us up, but it's still slaves. We had rights to absolutely nothing. You get John Locke and his natural rights theory that we're endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. And you move to Adam Smith in 1776. In September, he publishes a book called The Wealth of Nations, Laissez-faire Capitalism. This book describes the ability to make wealth in a very specific way, and it's designed to give people the freedom to make wealth, a la John Locke. Make all you can all you get, and then sit on your can. Now, the genius of Adam Smith and capitalism is the following. He said you need access to property. Back in the days of the kings and the queens, we had no access to property. We were property. We were owned by the king. Adam Smith says if you can get property and you can add your labor to it, you can end up with what he calls a product. For instance, I started a computer business. I had $500, and I used that $500 to buy property. I bought computer cases, I bought computer screens, central processing units, hard drives, all the property I would need to build a computer. Then I added my labor. Now, labor is not just physical, it can be intellectual. I had studied, I knew how to do this. I applied my manual labor, and the product I came up with was a computer. Now, here's the genius of capitalism. If the amount of money it took me to make my product is, let's say, $200, and I can sell my computer for $400, the difference between what it cost me to make the product and what I can sell the product for is called profit. That's my money because I took my property and added my labor to it, invested and created a product that I was able to sell for more than it cost me to create, and the excess money is called profit. I worked hard for it, I earned it, that profit belongs to me. This is where John Locke and Adam Smith dovetail. You have a right to make all you can all you get, sit on your can. That's my profit. It came from my property and my labor. Now, if you don't have access to property, what do you have left? $8 an hour. Don't quit your day job. You're a common laborer. And I'm not saying there's something wrong. I don't mean it in that way. I'm just saying without property, according to Adam Smith, you do not have access to profit. The genius of capitalism and Adam Smith's understanding of capitalism is that we needed to finally get access to property. Property is where the wealth of capitalism exists. If you don't have property, all you have left is labor, and you become a wage earner. And it's very hard to accumulate profit in order to buy property so that you can accumulate more profit, more property, more profit, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, one of the downfalls of capitalism is that there's a few people who are able to accumulate large amounts of property, and therefore there's less property available to other people. We call this monopolies. Back in the 1980s, there were two brothers called the Hunt brothers in Texas who had literally cornered about 90% of the silver market. When you control everything, you get to set the price. It's no longer a matter of supply and demand. Adam Smith thought supply and demand would dictate how the market produced wealth for people or didn't produce wealth for people. For instance, when there's a large demand for something and there's a small supply, you can charge more for it because more people want what you want. For example, the iPhone, when it first came out, people were paying $600 was the advertised price. Some people were buying it at $6, selling it for $8, selling it for $1,000 on eBay because there weren't enough iPhones initially to go around. As many as they produced, there was a higher demand than there was supply, and so it drove the price up. Now, if there isn't a large demand and there's too much supply, people have to get rid of it. Hewlett-Packard, another computer company, made tablets to try and compete with the iPad, Apple's iPad. Turns out people didn't want them. They had way too many tablets. There was no demand. Normally they charged at the beginning $699 for their tablet, and they ended up giving it away for $99. The law of supply and demand. It works very well as long as you don't have monopolies. As long as a few people don't accumulate so much property that no one else can have access to that property, and therefore everybody becomes day laborers, and we make minimum wages or minimal wages, and therefore there's no way we can accumulate profit. And that's how capitalism was designed to work in its most simplest terms. It is an economic genius. It is the greatest wealth producer anybody has invented. But it has its downfalls. This course is not designed to deal with those. A business ethics course would. But I need you to understand how capitalism was designed to work, how it works efficiently when it's worked correctly, and that there are pitfalls to it. Precisely greed. When you try and take too much and there's not enough left over for everyone else, it makes it very hard for everybody to participate in the economic system of capitalism.